Good evening, everyone present here. We'll be starting with infectious and diseases and immune disorder. And the faculty that we have here is Dr. Suvadeep Sensor. He is a consultant critical care department at Apollo Hospital, Mumbai. Yes, sir, you can take over. Thank you.
Thank you. So, everybody, am I audible now? Nice and clear?
Yes, sir, perfectly audible.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Please do make it interactive. I hope that you have gone
It's
through
a
my
request
last
to all
class.
the candidates to kindly, as this is an interactive session, you can switch on the mic and answer the questions. Plus, you can also write in the chat box. Thank you all.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Padmaji. So, we'll start our discussion from where we have left. I think we have done 20 questions last time, if I'm not wrong. Anybody is there from the last time? Let me check. Or you can just start. I think we have done some 20 odd questions last time. So let me quickly go through that. And we have done malaria. I think we have done with malaria. So this is the last question that I think we have done. Am I right? Is there anybody who is there from the last time class?
Yes, I attended last time. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, doctor. So I think this is we did some few questions on malaria. And we
Yes, yes.
talked about malaria, about the diagnosis and how to treat. I think this is done. So I think that we can start with question number 22. This question I think we have not done. What do you feel, doctor?
Yes, it was not done right.
That's not done. Okay. So let's start with this question number 22. So again, I think last time we have done some few questions on sepsis immunology, few questions on immunology, few questions on complement mediated infections, few questions on autoimmune versus sepsis mimickers, and we have done few questions on leptospira and malaria. So we'll complete few other questions and then we'll close this discussion. Okay. So question number 22, which one of the following infectious agent is the most classically associated with severe? So again, it's a very standard MCQ based question, standard MCQ. I hope everybody should be able to answer these things. So what do you think is the answer over here? So which one of the infectious agent causes rhabdomyolysis? Anybody, any one of you? Not able to hear. I think this might be the previous one. Okay. Okay. So So we're getting some. Okay, we're getting all sorts of. So you can tell me that what all infection can cause rhabdomyolysis. Anybody has an idea to what all infection can cause rhabdomyolysis? The answer over here is Legionella. Legionella is one of the infections which are associated with rhabdomyolysis sometimes. Legionella, especially sometimes with the Legionella pneumonia. So sometimes they develop some AKI, and then if you send CPK total, and sometimes you get the rhabdomyolysis kind of picture. Just hold on a bit. So these are the common infections that precipitate the rhabdomyolysis. You can take a screenshot if you want. Hello, Divans. Okay, so they are the common infection that are associated with the rhabdomyolysis. There are several causes of rhabdomyolysis. So they are the infective causes of rhabdomyolysis that we should know that in the day-to-day clinical practice. The commonly over here is the leptospira, which are very commonly associated with rhabdomyolysis. Apart from that, few of the necrotizing fasciitis and few of the and the plasmodium. Sometimes or malaria that can precipitate rhabdomyolysis. So these are the few things probably you should know. How do how do we identify rhabdomyolysis? So anybody who has come with a myalgia with a dark urine with a very high CPK level, and you have a kind of typical history which can precipitate rhabdomyolysis, like any travel history, exposure history, viral history, any other history. They are very much suggestive of that. Okay, this patient might be having rhabdomyolysis. Okay, so if somebody with pneumonia, we should think of Legionella infections. If somebody with a flu-like infection, influenza is one of the things that also can cause rhabdomyolysis. Dengue is one of the viral infection. They are associated with rhabdomyolysis. Okay, okay, is that okay? We'll go to the question number 23. Please, anybody, if you have any question, please do. You can just stop me at any point of time. You can just ask questions. Please do not put the question in the chat box. You can just unmute and then ask questions. Stop me and then ask question. Otherwise, I'll just keep on talking about all these things that we have. Question number 23. A 40-year-old man with dengue infections developed hypotension, myalgia, and color urine. Again, we are dealing with some rhabdomyolysis kind of scenario. His creatinine is raised. He doesn't have any pulmonary edema, and his urine output is low. So, what is the most appropriate fluid strategy? So, again, it's a
Aggressive fluid.
treatment. Yes. Okay. Great. So we need to start him on some. We need to hydrate him. So that is the first line therapy offer. So what is the answer over here? Answer is. So anybody has given any answer? Let me check. Anybody in the chat box? Okay, B. I think all of you are right. So the answer over here, as you have said, that it is you need to give a good aggressive fluid therapy. Aggressive means it's not very aggressive. It's a kind of whatever is required. There's nothing in the issue which is aggressive, restrictive kind of things, whichever is required for those. But most of the patients, anybody with a rhabdomyolysis, they require a good amount of fluid therapy for the hydration, because either they are dehydrated or you need a saline diuresis kind of thing sometimes that might help to flush out lot of myoglobin from the tubules. So they form a lot of casts in the tubule. So this is the theory. Question number 24. Which of the following the best explains the mechanism behind the shock and the organ dysfunction in severe dengue? We come to the dengue. So what causes severe, what are the mechanisms of the dengue shock syndrome basically, and dengue induced organ dysfunction?
C.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other answers, or we stick to the C? Let's see if somebody has given any other answer. C. Okay, great. Most of you are C. So I think let's stick to the C only. So good that you have given a good right answer. So it is most of the time we know that dengue are associated with the cytokine storm and they're associated with the capillary leak syndrome. So that is what is the major pathophysiology of the dengue. And dengue shock syndrome, the major cause behind the dengue shock syndrome is the capillary leak syndrome and the cytokine storm. And that is why most of the people with the dengue, they become hemodynamically unstable because of the cytokine storm. Question number 25. A 42-year-old man with the dengue admitted to the ICU with altered mental status with a lab AST of more than 1,000 and ALT is also more than 1,000. INR is 3.1, ammonia is 92, platelet count is 28,000. There is no active bleeding. CT brain is normal. So what is the next best step in his management? So what do you think is the next best thing in the management? We need to start in acetylcysteine or mannitol. We need to intubate and start him on lactulose. We need to give him steroid with the broad spectrum antibiotics, or we need to transfuse platelet. Do we need to transfuse over here? Anybody? Yes, transfusion is required.
No transfusion.
What is the cut of having a transfusions in patients with dengue in absence of bleeding?
10,000.
10,000. That's great. So should all remember that in dengue and in most of the cases, even in the ICU, we usually stick to a cutoff of 10,000 in absence of the bleeding. In presence of the bleeding, then we need. So what do you think about this syndrome? So what do you think we should do over here? So here probably it is important to go about the exclusion. So first of all, steroid in dengue is, or any antibiotic in the dengue is probably is not required over there. And here we are in a situation where dengue has caused some amount of ALF kind of pictures. Why ALF? Because there is a evidence of hepatocyte injury, there is an evidence of raised INR, and there is an evidence of altered liver, altered mental function with raised ammonia. So that means that there is some amount of acute liver failure kind of component. Okay, so and nested cysteine is recommended in all forms of acute liver failure in the initial setting, especially where the liver enzymes are elevated. They even in the non-paracetamol setting, sometimes we tend to give nested cysteine, which has become almost the standard of care, even in the kind of there is a one position paper which is given by the Indian Society of the Liver Transplantation Society of India, LTSI. So they also recommend to use inositol cysteine in all forms of liver failure in acute setting. Okay, any doubt over here? Okay, so we'll move forward.